The FIFA Women's World Cup ended a few weeks ago and the world has moved on. The domestic leagues have started, but I insist that I want to do my highlights of the tournament because ever since the tournament ended, it's been overshadowed by what happened during the award ceremonies. Of course, we know that Spain won the World Cup and Luis Rubiales, the president of the Spanish Federation, came under fire for kissing Jenny Hermoso on the lip, and that's been the story that overshadowed everything else that happened in the tournament. And I'll be making a video not particularly on what happened between Rubiales and Jenny, but the treatment of women's football and the narrative that goes along with that. So watch out for that. It will be coming out in a few weeks' time. Back to the World Cup. Spain won the World Cup for the first time in their history. They played against England, and we all thought that for the very first time it would be coming home, as the phrase goes, but they lost against a very, very good team. Spain took control of the game. England, I thought, would win because of Wigman's track record. That would sound out of place considering what happened 4 years ago. I will be talking about that later on. Yeah, there are a lot of things that happened during the tournament. This is by far the most competitive FIFA Women's World Cup in the history of women's football. I will just get straight into it. So my first highlight of the tournament has to be with Japan. They came out of the blocks. They were outstanding, and at some point they looked like the favorites to win. Every time we've talked about Japan, we've always looked back to the team that won the 2011 FIFA Women's World Cup at a time when their country had experienced one of the worst natural disasters. They played against the United States. They won that game. They won their first ever FIFA Women's World Cup. But then what happened is, over the years, we've not seen a repeat of that. They've not really come close. And so every other team that came after that have lived in their shadows. But the team that played in the World Cup showed that they are ready to come out of that. They had a very impressive run, but Sweden pumped the brakes on them in the quarterfinals. And honestly, I don't think many expected that. I remember one commentator saying that whoever was going to face Japan, either Sweden or the United States, they were in trouble because of how good they played. But unfortunately, against Sweden, it just didn't happen. Sweden didn't give them a chance to play, and they just crumbled. And I remember I put out a tweet and I said, when good teams crumble, they crumble really hard. So that for me was one of the highlights of the tournament. The other one, and I think this is expected, is the fact that for the first time in the history of women's football, we had 3 African teams at the round of 16. Before the tournament, all match predictions I came across, at least, none of them gave any African team an opportunity to come out of the group stage. Africa has never been thought as a real competitor, to be quite honest, but they changed the narrative by themselves. Nigeria, South Africa, and Morocco, they made it out of the group. En route in making that piece of history, South Africa got their first ever win at the FIFA Women's World Cup against Italy. They won the game 3-2. This was also the first time that they qualified for the last 16. This was the first time that Morocco also went through to the last 16. Remember, Morocco were debutants in the tournament, but unfortunately all of the teams were knocked out in the round of 16. Nonetheless, piece of history. My third highlight, and this I think all of you would expect, is the shock exit of the United States. Now, before the tournament and heading into the tournament, I think most people were aware that the United States were not in their best shape. But even though it was not a secret, I don't think many people would have envisioned that they would be knocked out in the round of 16. We would think that they would at least make it to the semi-final. But Sweden just made sure that we experienced the biggest shock, or one of the biggest shocks in the tournament. A lot has been said about why that happened. Some people say the coach was not very, very good at all. He should have left after the 2021 Tokyo Olympics. But their former player, Carly Lloyd, said something very, very interesting. She came in and said, after their victory in 2019, she said that something changed within the team. They probably felt invincible. They are way ahead, miles ahead of everyone, and they drowned in their own success and they became complacent. And then other issues came into play, which I think she meant all the activism and all the political fightings with the former president and all of that has come into play and taken over, and they've not been able to focus on the game. And so this shock exit is really an opportunity for them to hit the reset button. The United States has amazing players coming up. Trinity Rodman is one of them. Of course, there were so many players who were injured that they didn't go to the tournament with. Becky Sauerbrunn, Mallory Pugh, Kristen Press, Tobin Heath, they were all injured, but nonetheless, their display was just shocking from the word go. And then, of course, I have to talk about Sweden because, I don't know anyone who watched the World Cup and doesn't love the Swedes. It's a neutral team. I don't think anyone has any strong opinions about Sweden like they would about the United States or England. And for me, the way I've always looked at Sweden, they always come across to me like the underdogs. Before the tournament, there's not much said about them. But when they start to play, that's when people comment about their game and not so much about what happens off field. They are a very, very interesting team to watch and to follow. And they finished third. They won another bronze medal. And they now need to really find a way of winning a final. In the last 4 tournaments, they've won either a bronze medal or a silver medal, which is a sign of a very good team. All they need now is a gold medal. But I just love watching Sweden. My next point goes back to Sarina Wiegman. My prediction was that England would win the World Cup, but unfortunately, again, Sarina Wiegman in another final and lost the final. Now, the thing with Sarina Wiegman is that she pretty much uses the same players throughout the tournament. She pretty much uses the same tactics. And so by the time they get to the final, whoever they play in the final have a blueprint of what she would do. And so it gives them an opportunity to counter that, really puts them at a disadvantage. One, it could be that the players have played so many games, they get to the final and they are almost fatigued because they haven't rested as much. The rotation of the players again is something that doesn't really happen with her, and so it looks like she might need to think twice about that. But then again, if you look at great coaches, for example, Pep Guardiola, they tend to stick to their tactics, whether it works or whether it doesn't. They are very, very stubborn and they do not change quickly. But she's now gotten to 4 finals. She might need to find something over there to get her over the line when it comes to the final. And so those are my standout moments from the World Cup. I will leave it at that, but be sure to like, share, subscribe, and let's keep rolling.